Stoic courage, mastering the one virtue you can't fake. Stoic bloom. What if the only thing standing between you and your highest potential was something you couldn't pretend to have? You can fake kindness, you can act wild, you can play humble, but when life punches you in the gut, only real courage stands. Today you'll discover why Stoic courage isn't loud, reckless, or fearless, but quiet, disciplined, and utterly unstoppable. Part 1, Courage, the one virtue that can't be faked. Of all the Stoic virtues, wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage, only one exposes you the moment things get real. Courage. You can walk around quoting Seneca, pretend to be calm like Marcus Aurelius, or post Stoic quotes on your Instagram. But sooner or later, life calls your bluff. And when it does, no amount of philosophical posturing can hide your fear. Courage, in the Stoic sense, isn't about becoming a macho thrill seeker or charging into chaos for the sake of drama. That's not bravery, that's foolishness dressed up in delusion. Real courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being deeply aware of your fear and still choosing to act rightly. Courage is the armor of the rational mind. It's what allows a person to follow wisdom, uphold justice, and live with temperance when it would be so much easier to hide, run, or quit. A brave person may tremble, may cry, may sweat bullets, but they will do what needs to be done. They'll stand their ground not because it's easy, but because it's essential. The Stoics taught that when you run from problems, you only teach those problems how to chase you faster. Every obstacle you avoid becomes a monster that grows in the dark, but when you confront it with clarity and courage, you shrink it back to its true size. So yes, you can fake being calm. You can rehearse sounding wise. But courage reveals itself only in adversity. It's the truth that shows up when the comfort zone collapses. Now, if you find value in ancient truth that kicks modern anxiety in the teeth, consider joining us. Subscribe to Stoic Bloom, share this video with someone who's wrestling with life, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Who knows, your courage might just help someone else find theirs. Stoic Bloom, grow steady, stand firm, live true. Part 2. Hercules and the choice between pleasure and virtue. To understand Stoic courage, we must first walk in the sandals of a demigod. Before Hercules became a hero carved into the marble of legend, he was just a young man faced with a choice, one that mirrors the daily battles we all face in quieter, subtler forms. As the myth goes, Hercules stood at a fork in the road. Two women appeared, each representing a different path. One, adorned in silks, her eyes gleaming with seduction, called herself Pleasure. The other, dignified and strong, introduced herself as Virtue. Pleasure whispered temptations into his ears. Choose me, and you'll never know hardship. I'll fill your life with delights, comfort, and ease. You won't have to sweat for glory or strain for meaning. Everything will come without effort. You'll float through life. Virtue, in contrast, didn't sugarcoat the truth. She said, "What the gods grant has value only when earned. If you want to be admired by all of Greece, you must live not for yourself, but for something greater. You must suffer, stumble, and rise. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it." And Hercules, after weighing the glittering comfort of pleasure against the hard beauty of virtue, chose the latter. He chose the difficult path, the path of responsibility, struggle, and eventual greatness. Stoicism echoes this ancient tale. A Stoic does not chase ease, nor do they glamorize pain. What they seek is a life of substance, a life rooted in virtue, and courage is what allows them to walk that path. Courage is what lets you look pleasure in the eye and say, "Not today." It's what lets you keep climbing even when your legs ache and your spirit falters. It's what lets you choose growth over comfort. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But he also knew to live by that principle takes a lion's heart, because choosing what is right over what is easy, that's not just wise, it's courageous. In the story, Hercules became a god, but not because he avoided suffering. He became divine because he embraced it. Just like us, he had a choice, and he made the one most fear. And in doing so, he didn't just change his fate, he defined what it means to be truly brave. Stoic bloom. Greatness is the reward of those who dare the difficult. Part 3. 300 Spartans. Dying wasn't their goal, but duty was. If Hercules showed us how courage defines personal greatness, the Spartans showed us how it can shape the destiny of a nation. Picture this: 300 men, led by King Leonidas, standing at the narrow mountain pass of Thermopylae. Behind them, their homeland. In front of them, a Persian army 1,000 times their size. The math was absurd, the outcome inevitable. Death was not just likely, it was certain. And yet, they stood. Not because they believed they could win, not because they were reckless, and definitely not because they lacked fear. They stood because it was their duty, because running away meant more than defeat. It meant abandoning their values, their people, their identity. Stoic courage isn't about conquering fear, it's about acting despite it. These men didn't feel brave, they felt terrified, but they were anchored by something deeper than emotion. They were anchored by purpose. King Leonidas didn't lead with promises of survival, he led with clarity. This is what must be done. That's the Stoic heart, to see the horror clearly, to feel the weight of it, and walk into it anyway because it's right. Seneca said sometimes even to live is an act of courage, but sometimes to die for a cause greater than yourself is the ultimate declaration of freedom. These 300 men didn't fight to escape death. They fought to give their people time. Time to regroup, time to resist, time to survive. And they bought that time with their lives. Their sacrifice wasn't meaningless. At Salamis and Plataea, the Greeks finally defeated the Persian Empire. The courage of 300 saved an entire civilization. We often think we need a sword in hand or a battlefield under our feet to be brave. But today, bravery might mean speaking up when it's easier to stay quiet, leaving a toxic relationship, saying no to comfort and yes to principle. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice that says, "I'll try again tomorrow." If that voice is still alive in you, feed it. Subscribe to Stoic Bloom and walk with us into discomfort, into clarity, into purpose. Share this video with someone facing their own impossible odds and remind them courage is contagious. Drop a comment with your own Thermopylae. You never know who you'll inspire next. Stoic Bloom. Stand where you must, even when your legs shake. Part 4, what Stoic courage really means. Fear is not the enemy. Too many people think courage means being fearless, but the Stoics would laugh at that idea, not because it's wrong, but because it's incomplete. Courage to a Stoic doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means walking through fear with your values intact. Fear is part of life. If you're a living, breathing human being, fear will visit you. The question isn't if you'll feel fear, it's what you'll do when it arrives. Epictetus wrote, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." In that spirit, the Stoics didn't see fear as the enemy. They saw it as a reaction, neutral, instinctive, human. What mattered was your response. Let's be honest, anyone can act brave when the risks are low. But Stoic courage is forged in the uncomfortable, the uncertain, the ugly. It's the moment you say, "I see what this costs, and I'll still do it." Think about it. You need courage to confront your ego, especially when it's whispering lies of superiority or shame. You need courage to admit when you're wrong, not just to others, but to yourself. That's not weakness, that's fortitude. You need courage to face judgment from others without shrinking, to sit with discomfort without fleeing to distraction. To walk toward a future you can't control with a calm, clear mind. And that kind of courage isn't reactive, it's practiced, rehearsed, built day by day through small, quiet choices. Stoic courage is patient. It doesn't demand applause. It simply shows up and does what's needed. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, if it is endurable, then endure it. If not, then stop complaining. It's not poetic, it's real. It's the kind of raw realism that teaches you to trust yourself, not because you're invincible, but because you're prepared. In Stoicism, courage is not about chasing pain or avoiding comfort. It's about alignment, living in accordance with nature, with reason, with integrity. That's what made Hercules divine. That's what made the Spartans immortal. And that's what will make your own life unshakable, even if no one else ever notices. Stoic bloom. Courage isn't loud, it's consistent. Part 5, take responsibility, the first step toward true courage. Before you can be brave, you must first be responsible. That's where courage begins, not in grand speeches or heroic moments, but in quietly saying, this is mine to carry. Responsibility isn't glamorous. It doesn't trend. It rarely earns applause. But in Stoicism, it is the foundation upon which courage is built. Because how can you stand up for something if you haven't first claimed it as your duty? The Spartans at Thermopylae weren't just fighters, they were guardians. Their courage came from understanding that their city, their families, and their culture were in their hands. No one was coming to save them, so they saved what they could by standing their ground. In your life, responsibility might not look like defending a mountain pass. It might be showing up for your kids when you're exhausted, owning a mistake at work instead of blaming someone else, or taking the first step toward a better life before you feel ready. And make no mistake, avoiding responsibility is a form of fear. Fear that you're not enough. Fear that failure will hurt too much. Fear that others will see you struggle. But as Seneca reminds us, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. Responsibility is not a burden, it's an invitation to courage. And the more you accept, the more courageous you become. So don't wait for the world to hand you the perfect moment to be brave. It won't. Choose responsibility, choose presence, choose to act, even if it scares you. Now, if you've made it this far, congratulations. You've already taken responsibility for your mindset. Why not go full Stoic and do the next bold thing? Subscribe to Stoic Bloom. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that showing up matters. And leave a comment about one responsibility you have decided to own. Bonus points if it terrifies you a little. You got this, gladiator. Stoic Bloom. Own your life or someone else will. Part 6, know what you can control. The logic of Stoic fearlessness. Imagine standing at the edge of a storm. The wind howls, the sky darkens. People panic, run, scream, but you stay calm, not because you're stronger, but because you understand something they don't. You cannot stop the storm, but you can anchor yourself. That's the heart of Stoic fearlessness. The Stoics weren't superheroes. They didn't pretend to be above fear or immune to panic, but they had a secret weapon that made them emotionally invincible: the discipline of control. Epictetus said it best: some things are up to us and some things are not. With that single distinction, he gave humanity a mental shield against chaos. It's simple, but not easy. You cannot control what people think of you. You cannot control whether you fall sick, get fired, or get betrayed. You cannot control the economy, the weather, or other people's opinions. But you can control how you respond. You can choose your perspective, your words, your effort. You can train your mind to remain still, even if the world shakes. And here's the twist. Most of our fear comes from trying to control what was never ours to begin with. We fear rejection because we think we can control how others feel. We fear failure because we believe success should always obey our timeline. We fear death because we've convinced ourselves we're entitled to more time. But once you accept that the external is indifferent, you become powerful. Why fear the storm if you know you weren't meant to stop it, only to stand wisely within it? This is why Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. They imagined worst-case scenarios, not to wallow in anxiety, but to prepare the soul, to make peace with what may come, to reclaim power over fear by focusing on what remains theirs, their choices. A Stoic doesn't say, "I'm not afraid because nothing bad will happen." A Stoic says, "I'm not afraid because no matter what happens, I will act with reason." And that, right there, is the courage we all seek. Not flashy, not loud, but grounded, unshaken, inner steel. Stoic bloom. Peace begins where illusion ends. Conclusion. The call of courage. In the end, courage is not a decoration for moments of glory. It is the silent strength that sustains you in the ordinary trials of life. It's the force that lets you act justly when it's easier to ignore, to remain disciplined when indulgence beckons, and to speak truthfully when silence feels safer. The Stoics never claimed courage would make life easier. They claimed it would make you worthy of life itself. In every situation, be it public scorn, private failure, or deep personal fear, courage is what holds your values upright when the winds of the world try to bend them. So ask yourself not if you are afraid, but whether your actions reflect who you are when fear is present. That is the question every Stoic must return to. That is the path Hercules walked, Leonidas stood upon, and Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of in solitude. Now, if this message resonated with your inner warrior, I invite you sincerely, as a fellow traveler on the path of virtue, to stay with us. Subscribe to Stoic Bloom, not to consume content, but to nourish your mindset. Share this video with someone whose heart beats for something deeper than comfort. Leave a comment not for likes, but to leave a trace of thought that may guide someone else. Together, let us make reason fashionable again. Let us normalize resilience, clarity, and moral strength in an age addicted to chaos. Stoic Bloom, where courage becomes your quiet strength.